I paid for everyone's hotel. My family left without telling me, and I signed the will when I got back to my room. It started right there, in that fancy five-star hotel, the one I paid every single cent for, the most expensive one they could ever dream of. My reward? Being left behind, right in the hallway, the sound of my own son Michael whispering echoing in my ears. Finally, free of the burden. I could have cried right then and there. I really could have screamed, let out all the hurt that was bubbling up inside me. But something else happened. Something shifted. What they didn't know, as they walked away, was that feeling of abandonment, that deep, raw sting of being left behind. It was actually the key. It unlocked a door, one I'd kept shut tight for years and years. It was the door to my true strength. In that very instant, standing there all alone, my sweet keys still clutched in my hand, it wasn't just the sting of their betrayal I felt. There was another weight, too. The weight of a secret. A promise my late husband, Arthur, made me keep for so long. A secret that was about to completely change everything for all of them. They saw me as this fragile, maybe even a little bit penniless, old lady. That's what they imagined. But they were so wrong. I was the one holding all the cards, every single one. And well, they had just broken the most important rule there was. This trip, this supposed dream come true, was now turning into something else entirely. A harsh lesson. They thought they wanted a vacation without me, didn't they? That's what they had planned. But what they were actually going to get was a permanent memory. A memory of the day they profoundly underestimated, the mother who had given them absolutely everything she had. Little did they know, standing there in that hallway, I wasn't signing my defeat. No, not at all. I was signing their sentence. My name is Margaret. I'm 72 years old now, and it's been 10 years since my wonderful Arthur passed away. To my boys, Michael and David, I'm just Mom, the one who lives on a modest pension, and who tries to make ends meet by selling homemade pies to the neighbors. It's something I've done for years, a little extra cash, or so they thought. They got so used to seeing me that way. My simple life, my clothes, never anything fancy, always unbranded, and my old apartment, the one I've lived in forever, the one I never renovated. It stayed exactly the same year after year. The image they had of me, the one they truly believed, was of a woman who depended on their goodwill for everything. Just a sweet, slightly frail old lady, always needing a little help. What they never ever knew was that my late husband, Arthur, was a far more astute man than he ever let on. He worked his entire life, diligently, quietly, and he invested our money with a discretion, a cleverness that I learned to admire and eventually to replicate. Before he passed, before he left me with just this aching longing in my heart, he also left me with something else, a solid estate. More than solid, really, and with the clearest instructions. I can still hear his voice, calm and steady, like he knew exactly how things would play out. Margaret, he'd said, holding my hand, live simply. Let them think what they want. Use this power, our power, only if one day they forget your worth. For years, I followed his advice to the letter. Every single word. I sold my pies, not because I needed the money, but for the sheer pleasure of it. And yes, to maintain that very image. The one that protected me from their greed. I paid for my grandchildren's college tuition, every penny, telling Michael and David it was my last bit of savings. I helped them with down payments for new cars, always with the same excuse. "Oh, it's just my last little bit, dear. I wanted to help." I gave them the fish, always, but I kept the entire ocean I owned completely hidden. I lived simply. I went about my days, quiet and unassuming. And they, my sons, grew so accustomed to that idea. The idea that I had nothing more to offer, not a single thing. And they, my sons, grew so accustomed to that idea. The idea that I had nothing more to offer, not a single thing. Then, one Sunday lunch, the idea of a family trip came up. We were all gathered around my old dining table, the one Arthur and I bought when we first got married. Michael, my older son, leaned back in his chair, a little too comfortably, I thought. He looked at me, a smile playing on his lips, but his eyes, I remember them so clearly. They held something else, something calculating. "Mom," he said, and the words sounded so innocent. "It would be so great if we all went to that resort in Naples, Florida, like in the old days." He said old days, but I knew what he meant. He meant the days when Arthur was alive, when money wasn't a question, and we really could just pick up and go. He knew, everyone at that table knew, that the Margaret who sold pies for pocket change couldn't possibly afford a fancy resort in Naples. Not even close. It was an impossible invitation, cloaked in a sentimental memory, a way to make me feel small, to remind me of what I'd lost, and what I supposedly couldn't provide. But oh, how I longed for those old days, for the genuine laughter, the real togetherness, a deep, aching longing, so strong it overshadowed the flicker of malice I saw in Michael's eyes. And in that longing, a different kind of resolve took root. My secret, the one Arthur had entrusted me with, that was my way. This could be it, I thought. This could be the gesture that finally made them see me again, not as a burden, but as their mother. A mother who could still make their dreams come true. A mother who would find a way. So I took a deep breath, and I said I would. I told them I had some money put aside, enough perhaps for something like that. They didn't push too hard, just exchanged glances. I could almost hear them thinking, "Poor Mom, she'll find some meager savings." To make it all believable, to truly sell the story, I decided to put on a little show. I wore my simplest dress, and a few days later, I went to a local jeweler. I publicly sold the wedding ring Arthur had given me. My beautiful, cherished wedding ring. It was a sacrifice in their eyes. I told them, with a tremor in my voice I didn't have to fake completely, that it was the only way I could get enough money for such a grand trip. My sons, Michael and David, and their wives, Sarah and Lisa, they accepted this sacrifice with what I can only call superficial gratitude. Lots of, "Oh, Mom, you didn't have to," and pats on my arm. But there was no real understanding in their eyes. No genuine appreciation for what they thought I was giving up. They never imagined, not for a second, that the value of that precious ring wouldn't even cover a single night of room service at that resort. Not even a fancy breakfast for one. I paid the fortune for the entire reservation, the luxurious suites, the whole package, with the real money, Arthur's money, the money he told me to hold on to use only if they forgot my worth. I sent the transfer, confirmed everything, and as the confirmation email arrived, I felt a strange pang, a pang of hope, a desperate, quiet hope that this grand gesture, this trip I was orchestrating, would somehow make them look at me differently, that it would rekindle some spark of the love and respect that felt so distant. But the coldness, that creeping chill, it began even before we reached Naples. It started right there in the car. I was squeezed into the back seat of Michael's SUV, practically sitting on top of the luggage, while my daughters-in-law, Sarah and Lisa, were up front, comfortable and oblivious. They talked about shops they wanted to visit, restaurants they wanted to try, plans for days at the pool, all from which I was clearly excluded. Their voices were light and airy, full of excitement, but their words felt like a wall building up around me. Any attempt I made at conversation, a question about their day, a memory of past trips, was met with polite but firm monosyllables. Or, yes, Mom, nothing more. The promise of togetherness, the very reason I had agreed to this trip, was already unraveling on the road. It felt like a thread being pulled, stitch by painful stitch. The warmth of the Florida sun, streaming through the car window, it did nothing to thaw the ice. Their dream trip, really. But I already felt like a stranger in my own life, a stranger in my own present. The coldness that began in the car, that little thread of unraveling, it snapped entirely when we finally reached the magnificent lobby of the Naples resort. All that grandeur, the soaring ceilings, the polished marble floors, the scent of expensive flowers in the air. It felt like a stage, and I was about to play my final, most humiliating act. I stood at the check-in desk, my worn purse clutched tight, feeling the weight of the enormous sum I was about to pay. The receptionist, all smiles and efficiency, processed everything. I handed over my credit card, the one linked to Arthur's trust, not my pie money, and watched as the total amount flashed on the screen. It was an astronomical number, but I just nodded, a quiet satisfaction that I could do this, that I was making their dream come true. As the card went through, and the receptionist handed over a stack of key cards, ready for distribution, my sons, Michael and David, their wives, Sarah and Lisa, and even my grandchildren, they didn't wait. They didn't look at me, not one of them. They simply took the key cards from the receptionist's outstretched hand, a swift, practiced motion. And then, without a single word, without a glance back, they turned their backs and walked away, towards the elevators, like I was invisible, like I was never even there. I stood completely still. The hum of the air conditioning, the distant chatter of other guests, it all faded into a dull drone. All I could see were their retreating backs, their figures disappearing into the polished chrome of the elevator doors. My chest tightened, a sharp, sudden pain, like a fist clenching around my heart. The metallic doors slid shut with a soft hiss, and I was left alone. Just me, in the vast, opulent lobby, abandoned. It was in that silence, that deafening quiet after they vanished, that I heard a faint, familiar voice. Sarah, Michael's wife, her voice, clear and crisp, even though it was just a whisper. It floated back to me from just beyond the closed elevator doors, carried by some cruel draft. Phew. Finally free of the burden. Now our real vacation begins. My heart, already in pieces, felt another crack. The words cut deeper than any physical abandonment could. Free of the burden. That was me. That was how they saw me. I stood there for a moment longer, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of what just happened. Then, almost mechanically, I picked up my own phone. I was going to call them. I was going to ask them why. Why had they just left me? But as I reached for my phone, my gaze fell on something else, sitting on the reception desk. A phone, my granddaughter Chloe's phone. She must have forgotten it in the rush. It lay there, screen still lit, and that's when I saw it. A notification. A WhatsApp group notification. A group I wasn't part of. The name of the group. They called me the old lady. They complained in stark, blunt words that I would slow everything down, that I wouldn't enjoy their kind of fun. And then came the final, most brutal blow. They were planning to leave me with the bill. Not just for my room, but for all the extras. The drinks, the excursions, the expensive meals they'd enjoy without me. She insisted on paying. One message read, "I think it was Lisa. Now let her deal with it." Another chimed in, "Yeah, it's her treat." Right? A hollow laugh emoji followed. Their words were sharp knives, each one twisting deeper into my already fractured heart. The trip wasn't for me. It was at my expense. Every single cent I had spent, every secret I had kept, every dream I had dared to nurture for this family was a farce. A cruel, elaborate charade. And I was the disposable piece in their game. The one they used to fund their fun, only to cast aside the moment I was no longer needed. There, with Chloe's phone still burning in my hand, the harsh words still blazing in my eyes, I finally understood. The love I had given, the sacrifices I had made, the very essence of my being as their mother. It no longer had a place to reside. Not in their hearts, not in their lives. I was just a means to an end, a wallet, a burden to be shed, and a fool. That was the moment everything fractured. My hand, holding Chloe's phone, slowly dropped to my side. The words on the screen, those cruel, calculated words, they stopped hurting in the way a fresh wound does. Instead, they crystallized into something cold, something hard. There were no tears, not then. The reservoir had simply dried up. What was the point of crying for people who saw me as a burden, a joke, a wallet to be drained? I turned, leaving the forgotten phone right there on the reception desk. My own sweet key, the one they hadn't bothered to wait for me to pick up, felt heavy in my palm. The walk to the elevators, then the quiet ride up, the long corridor to my room. It was all a blur, My mind wasn't on the luxury around me or the humiliation I just endured. My mind was elsewhere, in a space that was suddenly, shockingly clear. When I finally stepped into my suite, closing the door softly behind me, there was a profound silence. They had left me behind. Yes, they thought they had abandoned me to my misery. But what they didn't realize was the gift they'd just given me: time and silence. Precious, undisturbed time to think. Time to simply be. In that quiet room, with the ocean view I now barely noticed, the deep, gut-wrenching pain I'd felt minutes before transformed. It became something else entirely. A cold, sharp clarity. It was like a fog lifting, revealing a landscape I hadn't seen in years. A Margaret who erased herself for others. The woman who allowed herself to be diminished, to be used, to be called a burden. She died right there in that fancy hallway. Or maybe she just finally gave up the ghost in this silent room, and in her place, someone new was born. The woman my husband Arthur always knew I could be, the one he had prepared me to be, the one he had given me the tools to become, if ever I truly needed them. I reached for my phone, but my fingers didn't automatically go to their numbers. Not Michael's, not David's. My first call wasn't to them, not to demand an explanation, not to beg for an apology. No, my first call was to Mr. Davies. Mr. Davies has been my lawyer for 20 years, ever since Arthur first introduced us. He's a quiet, serious man, very precise. He knows my story, or at least he knows the parts Arthur wanted him to know. Mr. Davies, good afternoon, I said, and even I was surprised by how steady my voice was. There was no tremor, no hint of the heartbreak that had just tried to shatter me. I heard the familiar rustle of papers on his end, then his calm, professional voice. It was the first brick in my reconstruction, a solid foundation after everything had crumbled. He assured me everything would be prepared quickly, ready for my digital signature as soon as I sent him the new directives. He didn't ask questions. He just listened. He understood. My second call was to the hotel manager. I explained in a calm, clear voice that I was the reservation holder, the sole payer for all the suites, and that I wished to make some immediate changes to the booking. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just stated the facts, my words measured and deliberate. I was still on the phone with the manager when there was a soft knock. Then the door to my suite gently opened. It was Chloe, my granddaughter. She looked distraught, her eyes wide and red as if she'd been crying. She must have come back for her phone, or maybe she realized I was alone. She saw me, saw the phone in my hand, saw the strange, quiet resolve on my face, and without a word, her eyes filled with fresh tears. But these weren't tears of anger or judgment. These were tears of understanding. She sat beside me on the sofa, not touching me, not speaking, just being there, in silence. It was the only support that mattered. They, my sons and their wives, they probably thought I was up here, alone in my room, sobbing. They imagined I was drowning in self-pity, regretting the money I'd spent, the sacrifice I'd made. They imagined I was the same old Margaret, heartbroken and helpless. But they were so wrong. In truth, in the quiet of that beautiful room, with Chloe's silent presence beside me, I wasn't signing my defeat. I wasn't crying over their betrayal. No, I was signing the end of their lies, every single one of them, and the beginning of my truth. The next morning, the sun was bright, almost mocking, but inside me, a different kind of light was dawning. Chloe and I, we walked slowly, not rushing, taking in the hotel's splendor without feeling the need to be part of its hurried energy. We found a perfect table right by the window with an unobstructed view of the ocean. The waves crashed softly, a steady, calming rhythm. We ordered our breakfast calmly, a simple omelette for me, some fresh fruit and pastries for Chloe. A little bubble of calm before the storm I knew was coming. About 20 minutes later, the first tremors began. I saw them approaching the restaurant entrance. Michael, David, and their wives, Sarah and Lisa. Their faces were red, their movements stiff. A clear, contained fury radiated from them, almost like a heat wave. Their eyes, when they finally found me at my table, held a mix of confusion and pure, unadulterated rage. It was as if I had personally committed some heinous crime. They walked directly towards me, their steps heavy, their expressions dark. Michael was the first to speak, his voice tight, strained, as if he was forcing the words out through clenched teeth. "Mom!" He practically spat, his eyes narrowed. "What's going on? We can't get into the restaurant. Our keys have been blocked." He looked at me, waiting for me to panic, to apologize, to fix it for them. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my orange juice. It was sweet, refreshing. I lowered the glass, meeting his furious gaze with a serenity I didn't have to fake. It was real. A deep, quiet calm had settled over me. "Good morning, my son," I said, my voice soft, unhurried. How strange. Chloe and I had no problem at all. We just walked right in. "Perhaps you should speak with management." My calmness hung in the air, a thick, palpable presence. It didn't just disarm them, it irritated them even more. I could see the confusion flickering in their eyes. They couldn't understand it. How could the fragile old lady, the burden they had dismissed, possibly have any control over this situation? They expected me to be flustered, to be as lost as they were. Instead, I was sipping orange juice, watching the ocean. Their faces contorted, a silent argument passing between them. They turned, Michael leading the charge, and marched directly to the reception desk. I watched them, my expression carefully neutral. I saw them speak to the receptionist, their gestures becoming more agitated. The receptionist, a young woman with a polite but firm demeanor, listened patiently, then shook her head. She pointed discreetly towards my table. I saw their heads snap back, their eyes finding me again. The receptionist must have told them, informed them in her professional hotel-speak way that there was a problem with the reservation, and that only the holder, Mrs. Margaret, could resolve it. The humiliation was visible, stark. It wasn't a hidden emotion. It was painted all over their faces as they realized they had to return to my table. To me, the one they had abandoned. They walked back, slower this time, their confidence visibly deflated. They didn't ask for a solution. Oh no, their arrogance was still too great for that. They demanded it. They stood there before my table, their mouths set in hard lines, their arms crossed, waiting, expecting, as if I owed them this, as if I was still the person who would jump to their command. They couldn't see the trap. Not yet. They were so caught up in their own perceived entitlement, their own self-importance, that they were blind to the net they had woven around themselves. The confusion in their eyes, the dawning, uncomfortable realization that something was fundamentally wrong. That was my appetizer, the first course of the lesson I was about to serve. My stomach felt a strange mix of calm and anticipation. The moment was almost here. My stomach felt a strange mix of calm and anticipation. The moment was almost here. With my sons and their wives still standing there, their faces a roadmap of confusion and simmering anger. The hotel manager approached. He was a tall man, impeccably dressed, and he spoke discreetly, directly to me. Asked if I would like to resolve the situation, his voice gentle, almost a whisper. It was an offer to let them save face, to make it seem like a misunderstanding. But not anymore. I stood up slowly from the table. Every movement was deliberate. I felt a surge of strength, a quiet power settling deep within me. This wasn't about anger anymore. Not entirely. It was about something far more profound. Dignity. The dignity they had tried to steal from me in that hallway. The dignity they had trampled with their cruel words. I looked at my sons, Michael and David, truly looked at them, and saw not the boys I raised, but the strangers they had become. There was a quiet resolve in my voice, a firmness that surprised even me. "There's nothing to resolve," I said, my gaze steady, unwavering. "Your reservation has been canceled." Michael, my older son, let out a short, incredulous laugh. It wasn't a laugh of amusement, but of pure disbelief. It was harsh, grating. "Canceled?" he sputtered, his face flushing even deeper. "You can't do that, Mom. We're not paying for this." His voice rose, attracting the attention of other guests. That was the exact moment. The moment I chose to reveal everything. All the years of pretending, all the quiet sacrifices, all the secrets Arthur had entrusted to me. It all led to this. I took a deep breath, letting the calm settle over me one last time. "You won't pay for anything, Michael," I said, my voice cutting through his indignation, clear and strong. "Because I already paid. I paid with the money your father, Arthur, left me." Flicker of something they couldn't quite grasp. "An estate I've managed for 10 years, I continued, my gaze sweeping over all of them, holding each one accountable. "An estate that you never knew existed. Because I knew your greed would always speak louder than your love." Their faces were a mixture of shock and dawning horror. They seemed to deflate just a little. Their arrogance, which had been so palpable just moments before, began to crack. I reached into my purse, a small, simple leather bag, and pulled out a folded document. It was a consolidated bank statement, thin but heavy with truth. One Mr. Davies had sent me just that morning. I unfolded it slowly, deliberately, letting them see the impressive numbers, the undeniable proof of my hidden wealth. I didn't need to hold it out to them. The sheer value represented on that paper was enough. While you called me a burden, I stated, my voice holding no trace of emotion, just fact. While you whispered about being free of me, I was financing the luxurious life you can't afford on your own. I paid for your children's college, your cars, the down payments for your homes, all of it, always with the excuse of my last bit of savings. I gave you the fish, but I owned the entire ocean. The silence that followed was absolute. They were stunned, speechless. Their mouths were slightly open, their eyes darting from the bank statement to my face, then to each other. Sarah and Lisa, my daughters-in-law, looked like statues. Michael and David, their usual bravado completely gone, stood frozen, their faces pale. And then I delivered the final blow, the one that solidified everything. Upon returning to my room yesterday, I said, my voice gaining another layer of steel, the first thing I did was call my lawyer, and I digitally signed a new will. Chloe, who had been sitting quietly beside me, gasped softly. Her hand instinctively reached for mine, a comforting squeeze. The burden here, I continued, my eyes fixed on my sons, will leave nothing more to those who abandoned her in a hallway. I paused, letting those words sink in, watching the realization hit them. The luxury resort, the expensive breakfast, the life they believed was their right. It was all a mirage, and I held the power to shatter it. Your vacation is over, I concluded, my voice firm, final. Your suite, the one you think you're going back to, is paid for one night. My suite and Chloe's is paid for the rest of the week. I glanced at the manager, who nodded discreetly. You may check out. In that single, shattering moment, they didn't just lose a luxury vacation. They didn't just lose a source of endless financial support. They lost something far more profound, something that could never be bought back, no matter how much money Arthur had left me. In that moment, watching their faces crumble, they lost the right to call me mother. The bond, already frayed, had finally, definitively snapped. In that single, shattering moment, they didn't just lose a luxury vacation. They didn't just lose a source of endless financial support. They lost something far more profound, something that could never be bought back, no matter how much money Arthur had left me. In that moment, watching their faces crumble, they lost the right to call me mother. The bond, already frayed, had finally, definitively snapped. Chloe and I didn't stay at that luxury hotel for the rest of the week, despite my suite being fully paid. The opulence of that place, its grand hallways and expensive finishes, it was all too stained by betrayal. Every gilded mirror, every plush carpet, it felt tainted by their greedy eyes and whispered words. It was no longer a place of potential peace, but a monument to a painful ending. We checked out that very same afternoon. It was quiet, quick. The manager was discreet, understanding. As we walked out of that grand lobby, I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in years. We took a taxi, Chloe and I, to a small, charming inn I'd passed by before, tucked away in a quieter part of Naples. It was a place I'd always wanted to visit, with its welcoming porch, its blooming gardens spilling over with bright bougainvillea, and a serene view of a quiet, almost private beach. There wasn't gold in the faucets here, no shimmering marble. It was simple, rustic even, but the air, oh, the air here was different. It was filled with peace, and for me, that was the greatest luxury of all. Our days at the inn became simple, yet profoundly full of meaning. We woke early, not to an alarm, but to the gentle chirping of birds and the soft glow of the morning sun. We'd walk on the sand, feeling the cool, damp grains beneath our bare feet, collecting seashells, just for the quiet joy of it. In the afternoons, we'd sit on the porch, rocking gently in the chairs, reading books, the pages rustling softly in the breeze. And in the kitchen, a tiny warm space filled with the scent of citrus. I finally taught Chloe the secret recipe for my famous lemon pie, the one I'd made for decades, selling it to neighbors, pretending it was my livelihood. She laughed, her hands covered in flour, and I saw a spark of genuine connection there, something deeper than any luxury could provide. Chloe, my sweet granddaughter, she told me about her dreams for college, about the path she hoped to forge for herself. And I, in turn, told her stories about her grandfather, Arthur. Stories of his quiet wisdom, his astute mind, the man who gave me the tools, not just the money, to be free, to be myself. There was no longer a need to pretend weakness, no need to play the part of the fragile old lady. I was simply Margaret, and Chloe saw me, truly saw me, for the first time in a long time. My new life, the one that unfolded after that day, wasn't about revenge, not anymore. It wasn't about ostentation. It was about the simple, profound joy of watering plants in the morning, feeling the cool earth, seeing the green shoots emerge. It was about finding beauty in the small, unassuming moments. When we returned home from Naples, I sold the old apartment, the one they knew, the one that had become a symbol of my feigned simplicity. I bought a small house, nothing grand, but it had a backyard, a big one, large enough for a real vegetable garden, where I could grow my own tomatoes and herbs. And for the dog I adopted, a fluffy golden retriever mix who followed me everywhere, a constant, loving presence. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I didn't need to hide. I was just living, truly living. I learned wasn't a five-star hotel. It wasn't about lavish dinners or exclusive tours. It was the silence of a breakfast without disdain, without hidden whispers and cruel plans. It was the simple act of choosing where to be and with whom. Freedom, I learned, wasn't a five-star hotel. It wasn't about lavish dinners or exclusive tours. It was the silence of a breakfast without disdain, without hidden whispers and cruel plans. It was the simple act of choosing where to be and with whom. Today, as I look back at all of it, at everything that happened in that grand hotel lobby and beyond, I see something so clearly now. The deepest pain I felt wasn't their abandonment. No, It wasn't just being left in that opulent hallway or hearing their cruel whispers about being a burden. The greatest pain, the one that truly lingered, was my own abandonment. I had abandoned myself for years, you see. I truly believed my worth, my entire value, was only in how much I could serve them, how much I could give to my sons and their families. I thought my purpose was to always be there for them, to provide, to facilitate their lives. I didn't realize my worth was simply in who I was, just Margaret. It took me a lifetime. It took such a harsh lesson to understand this simple, profound truth. Self-love isn't selfishness, not at all. It's survival. It's the very core of being able to stand on your own 2 feet with dignity. And you? Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt like a burden to those people in your life? The ones to whom you dedicated your time, your energy, your very essence? Have you poured your heart into others only to feel overlooked or even dismissed? Sometimes we fall into this trap, don't we? We get so used to being invisible, even within our own homes, within our own families. We become part of the background noise. Our voices, our needs, our very presence can be silenced by a routine of subtle disrespect. It's not always overt. Sometimes it's just a casual disregard, a knowing glance that cuts deeper than any shout. We accept a little bits of affection or attention they throw our way for fear of being left with absolutely nothing. We tell ourselves it's okay, that this is just how it is. We become afraid of the emptiness, of being truly alone. But what I learned there in that silent hotel room and in the quiet of my new, simple life is that nothing can actually be the beginning of everything. When you strip away all the expectations, all the false pretenses, all the things you thought you needed to hold on to, what's left can be a powerful emptiness, an emptiness ready to be filled with your own truth, your own choices. It's a clean slate. It's where your real strength has been waiting. So please, listen to me. Don't wait to be left in a hallway, abandoned and heartbroken, to discover your true strength. Don't let someone else's unkindness be the trigger for your self-discovery. It's already there, believe me. It's hidden inside you, coiled and ready. It's just waiting for a decision from you, a decision to see it, to claim it, to allow it to manifest, to finally stand up for yourself. Is your worth also waiting? Is it waiting for that right moment, that perfect storm, to be rediscovered? Not by someone else, not by those who should already see it, but by yourself? Think about it. Think about the quiet voice inside you, the one that sometimes gets drowned out. What is it trying to tell you? It's a question I live with now, every single day. That quiet voice, the one I finally learned to hear, it whispers of peace, of contentment that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval or their presence. It tells me that the richest life isn't about glittering hotels or grand gestures, but about the gentle rhythm of my own breath, the warmth of the sun on my face as I water my vegetable garden, the wag of my dog's tail when I come home. I'm sitting here now, on my little porch, the one overlooking my new backyard. It's early morning, and the air is fresh, carrying the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. My golden retriever, Buster, is curled up at my feet, occasionally letting out a soft snore. It's a quiet life, a simple life, but it's entirely mine. Every choice I make, every moment I live, is for me and for the genuine connections that now fill my days. Chloe visits often, and our conversations are deep and true. We talk about everything and nothing, just like I always dreamed of doing with my children. She's studying hard, growing into a remarkable young woman, full of integrity and a kindness that shines from within. There's no pretense here, no hidden ledgers, no need to perform for anyone. I don't wear unbranded clothes to deceive, but because they're comfortable. I don't sell pies to maintain an image, but because it brings me joy to create something delicious. Sometimes just for Chloe and Buster, or for the new friends I've made in my small community. Friends who see me, Margaret, not as a source of funds or a burden, but as a person, a neighbor, a friend. The pain, yes, it was real. And the betrayal, it cut deep. But now, when I think of that day in the hotel, it's not with bitterness. It's with a strange sense of gratitude. They gave me the key, didn't they? They forced me to open that door to my own strength, to rediscover the woman Arthur knew was always there. They set me free from a life I didn't even realize I was trapped in. It was a harsh lesson, indeed, but one that led me to this profound serenity. I don't seek their company, and they don't seek mine. There are no apologies, no attempts at reconciliation. And that's okay. The silence where they once were is not an emptiness. It's a space filled with my own peace. My days are unhurried. I wake up with the sun, tend to my garden, read my books, spend time with Chloe. Sometimes I just sit and watch the clouds drift by, or listen to Buster's soft breathing. It's in these moments that I feel most alive, most connected to the world around me and to myself. I remember Arthur's words, "Margaret, live simply. Let them think what they want. Use this power only if one day they forget your worth." He knew. He always knew. And I've finally honored his wisdom, not just with the money, but with my life. I don't carry the weight of being a burden anymore. I don't carry the burden of their expectations, or the illusion of a family that wasn't truly there. I walk taller now, not because I have more money, but because I know my own worth, independent of what I can give or what others take. That's the real freedom, the freedom that comes from within. Sometimes, I wonder about those who might be listening to my story. Perhaps you recognize a part of yourself in it. This journey of self-discovery, of finding your voice and claiming your space. It doesn't happen overnight, and sometimes it takes a painful push, but it's worth it. Every single step. The greatest gift I received was the understanding that my life, my happiness, my very being does not depend on anyone else's perception or approval. It flows from within, and that's a beautiful, unbreakable truth. And if you want to keep receiving real stories like this one, pay attention. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. confirm if you're still subscribed to the channel, and hit the bell icon.